Hey everybody, welcome to Border Crossing. With me, Dan DeMarco. This is the final episode in the Quest for Residency series. I'm actually in line now, on my way back into Mexico after spending a good bit of the day today up in San Diego doing all kinds of different odds and ends and errands. But I know I ended the last episode of the series here where I was disappointed I didn't end up getting the appointment that I needed, the CETA, to actually get the residency card. So I was at the last step in the residency process, and it did not happen, and I was pretty disappointed. It turns out I had to make 3 more trips actually to the immigration office. A bunch of things that have happened at once that kind of foiled my plans there. Number one, there was this big earthquake and a cholera outbreak in Haiti, which resulted in a ton of Haitian immigrants flooding the Mexican immigration system, and apparently it was compounded by the fact that the U.S. Was going to take a whole bunch of these refugees, and the last minute pulled out, I guess, of the agreement and did not take them. So all these Haitian refugees were flooding the Mexican immigration system at the same time. They're trying to get residency or whatever at the same time I'm doing the same thing. So it made things very, very difficult. The processes actually changed because of this flood of Haitians. And so normally the last step, what's called the Conhe, that's when you actually exchange your 30-day visa for your temporary residency card. That's the last step of the process. Usually you can go to the immigration office, depending on whether if you live in Tijuana or Rosarito. Again, I'm talking about the Baja California region, just south of the border with California, San Diego. And you can go the day of. You can get an appointment the same day. You have to go really early in the morning. The office opens at 9, but you got to be there like 5 or 6 if you want to get one of the appointments that same day. But that was the previous process. Well, it turns out, unbeknownst to me, because of this Haitian refugee issue, I guess maybe other issues as well, they had changed the process to where you could only get appointments on Friday. Okay, you can only make appointments on Fridays for the following week. Okay, so I did not find this out till the next trip down to the immigration office, where this time I actually brought my wife with me. She helped. We talked to a few different people. We talked to a number of people actually. And we finally got this story about what the situation was, why I was not able to get an appointment previously, because they had changed the process where now I had to go on Friday and get there. I had to be one of the first 15 in line in order to give you guaranteed an appointment the following week. Now my 30-day visa was set to expire on Tuesday of that following week. And so I had to go Friday morning, and I had to ensure that I was one of the first 15 in line. Now, in order to make that happen, of course, everybody's going to go on Friday. Since it's the only day they're making appointments, of course, it's going to be the busiest day of the week there at the immigration office. So I got there actually at 4 a.m. sharp, maybe a little after 4, and I ended up being the 11th person in line at 4 a.m. So I sat there, eventually there was about 200 people, almost exclusively Haitian immigrants, maybe a few other Mexicans, but mostly Haitian immigrants plus myself, standing in this line from 4 a.m. until about 9 a.m. At which time they started letting people in, and I actually was able to get in and make the appointment. So that took all 10 seconds, 15 seconds. I went in and said, okay, I'm going to have an appointment. I need it for Monday because my visa expires on Tuesday. So that's great. So I had to then go back on Monday at the time of my appointment, which was 11:30, so not super early again, thankfully. So I showed up for the appointment, still not sure that pretty sure, but of course you never be 100% sure that all your paperwork and stuff is in order. Luckily, I had plenty of time to double and triple check everything. So everything turned out was in order. I had all the correct paperwork, everything was signed, and everything was paid for, all that stuff was done. And after about 2.5 hours of waiting in various parts of the immigration office, I walked out with my temporary residency card, and I can actually show it to you. Now, the card continues a long tradition of having some of the most horrible pictures of myself that I think you're probably ever going to see. I'll camera around so you can see this thing. Look at this thing. Look at that. It looks like my head was shrunken. Anyway, so one of those countries where they have those, they still do this head shrinking and whatnot. Not sure how that happened, but it looks like my head is shrunken down to the size of like a dwarf or something, mini-sized head. Anyways, the card. So the card the picture's terrible, but it's actually better. Believe it or not, it's better than my driver's license picture, but pretty awful. In any event, I got the card, my temporary residency card, after 3 months of effort. Incredible amounts of effort put into this. You would not believe how difficult, maybe you would if you've been through the process, how difficult it was to actually make this happen. And I hear similar stories about immigration system in the U.S. and of course other countries too. They sure as heck don't make it easy for you to do this. Man, was it painful. But really glad it's over. Actually, there's a lot of advantages to having that card. A lot of advantages, and eventually I will probably upgrade it to a permanent residency card, which apparently it's a little bit easier process, supposedly. We'll see, I guess, but that takes a couple years I think at least a year before you can apply for permanent residency. And I think my wife's probably going to go all the way for citizenship. I'm not going to go that far. I doubt it. Maybe someday, but I doubt it. I'd have to see how things pan out, where I end up. But I am pursuing still my Italian citizenship wholeheartedly. That process is ongoing. I definitely want to really want to get that EU passport. It just makes traveling abroad so much easier if you have one of those EU passports. So that's the main driver behind the Italian citizenship thing. That's been an interesting process. I learned a lot about my family history, especially on my dad's side, which is really important for it. I am an Italian citizen by law, based on based on what the research that we've uncovered about where my great grandfather, who emigrated here, never naturalized as a U.S. citizen. Therefore, my dad and myself are both officially Italian citizens. However, we have to make that official through the Italian court system, which is a labyrinth. It's business, and we also have to have all the paperwork and documentation to prove it, which includes certified original copies of birth certificates all the way back to my great grandfather and my great grandmother as well. So, tracking down all those documents, we're only about halfway there. We think we have a lead on most of them, but we don't necessarily have all of them. One of the things that screwed us up was that the spelling of my last name currently is Demarco, with no space between the E and the M. But historically, at least prior to moving to the U.S., there was DE space Marco. So once we figured that part out, it opened up a whole bunch of stuff, because a bunch of documents became available that we just missed because we were searching for Marco without the space. Okay, the space, I guess it got scrunched together when we moved to the U.S. the first time I got written down or whatever. So that really made things more difficult than it should have been. But in any case, we got that sorted out, and it's kind of an interesting family history. There's definitely some interesting stuff there. But in any event, hopefully now we can track down the rest of the documents that we need, or I can, and make this Italian citizenship happen. It's going to require a trip to Rome, probably, at least, and maybe another city there in Italy to finalize it, to get the rest of the final documents, I think. But anyway, so officially a Mexican temporary resident. Really glad that's over with. Really glad. Luna is with me, Luna, little wonder dog. We went to the park this morning and played some frisbee. She did really great as usual. I think she's actually asleep right now. She's pretty tired. Long day for her. So this line it's Friday afternoon, Friday evening. So this is pretty typical for Friday evening heading down into Mexico. A lot of U.S. people and also Mexicans returning from the week, or heading back so they can spend the weekend down there. And this is not unusual at all. It's 5 o'clock, so right around rush hour. Really bad timing on my part, but just couldn't be helped. Tomorrow's my birthday. Happy birthday, Dan. Not gonna say how old I'm turning. But it's pretty darn old. What else did I do? I went climbing up here in San Diego, near Mesa, the rip-off capital of the world for bouldering. I mean, God, $35 for a day pass in some of these places is insane. I'm going to try to leave the camera on a little bit longer than I normally do. I still am not sure about recording in either direction, coming across the border from the U.S. into Mexico, or Mexico from the U.S. to Mexico, whether it's allowed or not officially. So what I'm going to do though is leave the camera on, but I'm actually going to, just to be extra safe, I'm actually just going to set it down in the seat here, so it's not actually, no one will actually see anything, but I'll leave it on until I think it's at least fairly late in the process. But it's really a very simple process entering into the U.S. There's been actually a little bit of I kind of want to call it a skirmish, but a little disagreement between U.S. and Mexico on the Mexican side coming into the U.S. because of this Title 17 thing. They had these barriers put up to prevent asylum seekers from making it onto U.S. territory. So what they did is they put these barriers up, and they were checking IDs to make sure you had the proper documents to cross that barrier, which then puts you on U.S. soil. They're not actually technically allowed to do that. That's Mexican sovereign territory. So the Mexicans took offense to that, and they've sent some troops over there to pull the barriers, to politely ask and move those barriers out of the way. And then they also were going to start checking documents, so people had the proper documents to leave the country, which was really going to be a nightmare for a lot of people, because most people do not have the proper documents. The vast majority probably don't. So they never did the document checking part, but they did get those barriers moved for a few days. I think it only lasted maybe about a week. Now the reason they want to do that is because they believe they were trying to free up the U.S. workers that are standing at those barriers so that they can work the booths, so they can get more cars across the border. The reason they want to have more cars get across the border is because it's backing up traffic into Tijuana so badly, the lines going to the border, that it's screwing everything up, including the Century line, which is the line I use. It's backing up so far that it's really screwing up traffic in Tijuana. And of course, it's angering Mexicans big time. It's been going on for a really long time now. So if their thinking was, well, we'll free up these people. There's like at least 10 of these guys out at these barriers, just looking people as they drive through to show their documents. So they did that, but what CBP did, U.S. CBP, the first day they did this, those 10 people, instead of having them in booths, they all gave them vacation. So that did not go over too well either, as I understand. What I've read, it didn't go over too well. But in any case, they did keep it going for about a week. The barriers were not there, but I was back today. Actually, when I crossed, the barriers were back in place, and they were checking again. And there were no Mexican soldiers to be seen anywhere, or Mexican immigration officials to be seen anywhere on that side. Still Mexican sovereign territory, but it's on the way into the U.S. Interesting. I totally get it, and I have a lot of sympathy for the Mexican side here in this argument, because it really is backing up traffic, and I want to get across the border, of course, faster too. So I think it's ridiculous that the way they understaff, the way they underman these border checkpoints. They've got the people, but they're either standing around doing nothing, it looks like to me, or they are checking documents, just glancing at people's documents, as at least 5 or 6 or sometimes 10 of these people do with this. And today it looked to me like they were intentionally slowballing things. Again, this may be related to this little spat here, because I saw a number of cars, at least 3 cars in front of me in the Sentry lines got searched. One guy got sent to secondary. I mean, why are you sending people in Sentry to secondary? The idea with Sentry is a second, so you get sent to secondary for additional checks and stuff. Usually that's not supposed to happen in Sentry line, because that's the line where the people have gone through all the additional security checks already, right? So it shouldn't be, only in very rare cases should that happen. And I saw at least 3 cars get searched, and plus 1 got sent to secondary. And the guy working the booth was just really taking his time. I mean, it was obvious that he was really just taking his time. He walked out of the booth, walked 100 yards down the road, the other direction, came back, really was just going extra slow, and taking a sweet time. It seemed like everybody up there was. The line, there wasn't that much traffic, but the line was just poking. I mean, it was not moving at all. This is a pretty normal pace for the Mexican line. It pretty much moves. You don't ever come to a complete stop. It's kind of stop and go like this. Right here I'm on the 5 actually, and then the 805 is up there to the right. Right here, you can see it up there. This is where they merge. This is where it gets kind of the busiest. Generally speaking, the Mexicans have their side open full throttle at all times. I mean, they're trying to get as many people through as they can. They stop very few cars. Very few cars get stopped. I think when you're new, so for instance, when we first moved down here, we did get stopped a couple times. They have pretty sophisticated systems that are monitoring who's crossing the border, if the license plates. I believe they're weighing cars and things as they come in looking for unusual. If you've got a small car that weighs 20 tons or whatever, they're going to probably pull you over, that sort of thing. But really, their whole thing is to get as many cars across as they can. Which again, it makes sense. It's a huge boon for their economy. So they love to see this kind of traffic coming into Mexico on the weekends. All these people are going down there are going to spend tons of money probably in and around Tijuana. You still can turn around here, and you're not actually trapped here as far as coming back to the U.S. Just for your awareness, there is this left lane here. Actually, there's a U-turn that you can make to go back to the U.S. before you cross the border. It's kind of scary. You have to press this button. It's like a scary looking gate. You got to press this button or whatever to open it up, and then you can go around, do a U-turn, and go back into the U.S. There's no such safety valve on the other side coming into the U.S. Once you're in that Sentry line past a certain point, you're fully committed, and there's no way to turn around. Not a big deal in Sentry usually, because Sentry moves pretty fast. However, you inadvertently end up in the ready lane or in all traffic, for heaven's sake. You could be spending hours, up to a day or more, in those lines. You're trapped. You cannot turn around. You can't get out until you cross the border. Of course, if you end up in the Sentry line and you don't have the proper documents, you're looking at a $5,000 fine too, minimum. It's also not very pleasant. And potentially losing your privilege of never being able to get a Sentry card. Never be able to use a wedgie. That would pretty much seal the deal in terms of living down here. If you ever hope to cross the border in a reasonable amount of time, if you are considering a move down here and you need to get back to the U.S. on a fairly regular basis, you've got to have Sentry, number one, and number two, you can't lose it. Otherwise, you're going to be moving back to the U.S. because it's just not tenable. I'll leave the camera on all the way through the home again. May not be saying much, but this is how long as we want. You being the one person who watches this, you're going to watch this. There's probably nobody. But hey, you, wherever you are. Hopefully you're not sitting in a line like this. Been a lot of seismic activity down here recently. A lot. I say a lot. I don't know. I guess it's probably normal for here. But I felt my first earthquake yesterday. There were a couple big ones actually south of where I am in this volcanic field. These volcanic fields down south of Ensenada, 6.2 and something or other. They fell all the way up in San Diego, but I did not feel those actually. But this one was at the foot of the San Andreas fault actually with a 4.2, and I did feel it. It did kind of shake a little bit. Nothing came off the walls or anything like that. It was really pretty non-dramatic, but first one I've actually felt. So I've had a hurricane now and an earthquake. In the process of moving, we've got our new place, got the keys to the new place, which is about a block away from our current place. I think I talked about this some. We're doing a lease to own deal with the owner. So we're paying. So all the money we're paying in rent for the next 2 years, if we decide to buy after 2 years, buy the place, will be applied towards the down payment. It's a nice deal, I think, because it gives us time to line up financing, get our credit house in order, all those sorts of things we need to do to buy the place if we want to. And also, if we don't want to, that's fine too. We just walk away. Of course, we lose that money, but we would have lost it anyways on rent, at a different place. Is the way I see it. So, to me, it's a pretty good deal. So far, I really like the place. I'd say it's a lot nicer actually than our current place, which is very, very nice. Moving is always a pain. I really hope this is the last move for me for a while. I'm really sick of moving. I've moved so many times in my life I can't even count how many times I've moved. It's just such a painful process. This one's not nearly as bad because we got a whole month to do it. Plus we have probably more than a month if we wanted to. I think we could stay in our current place probably longer. And we also have it. It's only a block away. So it's like not even an eighth of a mile away. Anyways, the main thing I want to do is update people on the residency thing. Let everybody know that I did get the card eventually, finally. Do have it. I think I changed my mind. I think I'm going to probably end this. I want to listen to some music, and I can't do that, unfortunately, while I'm recording here. So I think I'm going to stop it here at 15 minutes. Probably should have listened to me ramble anyways. Let me see. I'll try to put some music on and see if it doesn't stop recording, but I'm pretty sure it does, because every time I've done this previously, it has. But let me see if I can do it. If not, take care. We'll see you again.